the Land of Middle Earth guys. Maybe, actually. It's not official. But we have this project called The Hunt for Golem coming out. I don't know if you guys have heard of it. Andy Serkis directing, starring, producing, probably doing the camera work too. I don't know. But Ian McKellen himself, Sir Ian McKellen, has been offered the role of Gandalf officially. What's your guys' first thoughts about that? JD, what goes through your mind hearing that?
From what I heard, like all this right people are coming back to direct, like oversee the whole project. Like I'm pretty sure most of the people from Lord of the Rings, which Hobbit, Peter Jackson might have directed it, but there wasn't like everybody involved as far as the writers. I forgot the names, but I remember what I heard. It's like the right people are coming back for this project, so it got me hyped. I think it's like the writers. Is it Peter Jackson coming, or it's Andy Serkis directing? Yeah,
Andy Serkis, but Peter Jackson and his boys from the trilogy are gonna like consult. And they'll be kind of helping out here and there, I think.
yeah. So that's got to be good news. I think they probably learned a lesson with The Hobbit to take a little more care in a live action project on the big screen, a movie. So I'm looking forward to it. I'm always looking forward to anything Lord of the Rings. It's just exciting.
Straight up. Lub, excited?
I'm hesitant. I do
Okay.
wonder how big of a role he would have in that movie. If it's smaller, I'm down. And I mean, if Gandalf is gonna be in the movie, it should be Ian McKellen, right? If it's around this time, Gandalf is actually supposed to be around here during this time, of course. So if he's gonna be in the movie, it should be Ian McKellen. But I don't want to see him as like the co-star of the movie going around chasing Gollum the whole time. Like give him like a good 10, 15 minutes of screen time, maybe. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I just pictured Ian McKellen bent over just after Gollum. Yeah, man, it's a weird deal for me. I don't like this. Should be good news. Are you kidding me? Again, like JD said, everything. They've got all the right people. They seem to be taking care of it. I just don't. I'm kind of there too. I don't know how much he's going to be able to be in it. Look, Sir Ian McKellen is old. The man is old. He is a legend, but I wouldn't be surprised if he was mid 80s. Let's see here. What do we got? 85 years old. Yep. Born in 1939 when Germany invaded Poland. Damn. He was born, and he is still being offered roles. So again, I love him. He's amazing. But my mind thinks back to this behind the scenes thing from the Hobbit filming. And, the trilogy, they did everything in person. He got to act off of people. And he's a thespian. He's a true, like, Broadway plays. Like, he's the core actor there. And there was like little clips of him like breaking down mentally on set of The Hobbit because he's surrounded by green and there's literally no real person by him, and he's trying to act and stuff, and he like breaks down, he kind of throws his pipe down and has like a panic attack. And that was 10 plus years ago. So now, as long as they do it practical and whatnot, I guess I just worry about him. Like, I don't know how much he's able to do. And if that leads to Vigo being offered the role, which I'm going to be mad if it's not him, but I'm also going to be hesitant if it is, because again, he's 50 something and he's not going to look like young Aragorn running around Middle Earth. So yeah, I guess I'm kind of a broken record. I'm still, I don't know what to expect at this point, but I guess it is good news they're offering it to him.
Yeah, because we all saw The Irishman on Netflix, right, with Robert De Niro.
I didn't. I heard enough to not watch it.
When he he beats up that guy outside, and you see him like throw the punch and kick him. It's like that's an 80-year-old man throwing a kick, like not this CGI
Doesn't look intimidating.
40-year-old. No, like so I don't want to see like CGI Viggo Mortensen and Ian McKellen running around.
Right. That was part of the magic. Was Vigo was such a legend behind the camera, and his choreography and everything. He was just so amazing that it was so captivating. And now I'm just skeptical, but they're moving forward, so it sounds like they're gonna go all in with this and try to get as true to the source as they can.
Would you rather him be recast if they have better presence?
See, that's the thing. I don't know. I think I'd probably be annoyed if they recast him. So I guess if they nail the recasting, I guess I'll be open-minded. If it's the same team coming back, I'm going to have to let go of Vigo and Ian McKellen. And I'll give my word that I'll give it a try at least. And I'll see where they go with it and who they would choose. But
They should just cast the damn stranger from Rings of Power. Keep that going as Gandalf.
that wouldn't be the worst idea, honestly. Even
Right.
though I'm still upset that's Gandalf, but that's, yeah. He looks the role. you know, he plays it pretty well. As much as I don't like him being there, he does. He's got the wizard stuff down. So.
Yeah, and with some makeup and some white beard hair and stuff like that, they can make it look good. And we're already going to be used to him as Gandalf.
Right. Wouldn't be the worst idea. Speaking of worst ideas, no, I'm just kidding. This isn't bad. I'm really curious. Actually, I'm sorry. I should have let off with Caleb first because I'm going to JD again on this one. Josh Brolin has been offered the role of Hal Jordan. I know this is a sidestep, but it's another casting thing. I figure let's touch on it. The role of Hal Jordan for the upcoming DC series on Max Lanterns. And if Brolin passes it up, the word is that Matthew McConaughey is next on the list, followed by Ewan McGregor, Chris Pine, and Timothy Olyphant. And I wanted to ask you, A, what do you think about this? And B, some people are saying the older casting of Hal Jordan is so that they can maybe do a Kyle Rayner / Parallax story. So what do you, JD, being the Green Lantern fan you are, what do you think of this news?
Josh Brolin doesn't seem to fit for me as Hal Jordan, and I don't believe he's going to accept that role, especially because I would expect Hal Jordan's casting to sign a long-term contract, and it just doesn't seem to fit Brolin's style. Like, he's this rugged kind of, he's a real actor. Like, he does real movies, good stuff like that. He's a great actor. I would be pretty excited if he took the role. It would just be really strange. It seems like a step away from the character Hal Jordan. And I think from that list you mentioned, Chris Pine would probably fit best. Because I don't believe for a second Matthew McConaughey would consider a role like this either.
JD, so maybe for me and the fans out there, could you give kind of a refresher on Hal Jordan as a character? Like, what kind of guy is he?
He's kind of a cocky, like a high energy, snarky. He's going to make a lot of jokes, not like in a Spider-Man way, but more in like a cocky, like I know what's best kind of way.
Okay.
He's not like a serious kind of like rugged character like
He's
Josh
not a
Brolin
brooding
plays.
He's
Not, yeah. Well, Hal Jordan's absolutely not like a brooding character. If they took the Parallax route, that would make kind of sense, but that would make me think that they don't have long-term plans for Hal Jordan. Because I would also think like a Glenn Powell or even a Miles Teller would fit in that role. You know, kind of more of a fun, upbeat character. Right. And Josh Brolin really doesn't hit those beats, but he's a great actor, so.
It's a good point. He doesn't really ever play the cocky gunslinger like that. Although, yeah, I love him and I'm up to see him. But I also, you said it, the first thing you said, yeah, I actually agree. I don't think Josh Brolin is going to accept this role anyways. And McConaughey's hilarious just because they said it's going to be like a true detective series, but in the DC universe, and they're literally pulling the star from that show on Max to take over this type of role. But
Woody Harrelson is Jon Stewart.
Yeah, that's Jon Stewart. Well, that's the other word is that Hal Jordan may be taking a back seat in this DC universe, and Jon Stewart is going to be the main Green Lantern.
He's older, right?
Hal Jordan.
Hal Jordan's supposed to be.
Yeah. So, sure. Lub, what do you think of this?
After what JD said about him being like a cocky, kind of more funny character, I don't know if Josh Brolin has that in the voice. Just his like deep, growling voice doesn't really work for those types of jokes. Mm-hmm. I mean, I haven't really seen him do any like comedic role. I've seen him in quite a few movies now, and I mean, Cable like has like dry humor, you know, but
yeah, but it's not.
And Matthew McConaughey, he's just one of those people like Tom Cruise where I don't want to see them in the MCU. They're too big of actors where you think it's Matthew McConaughey, it's not Hal Jordan, it's not Green Lantern, it's the actor.
Right.
I think Chris Pine, I'm not the biggest Chris Pine fan.
Me neither.
He's solid in Star Trek, even though, I mean, there's a good cast of characters around him at the same time. So I like Chris Pine. Ewan McGregor, he's kind of just Obi-Wan to me. That would be tough, you know?
It's messed up, but sorry, bud. You can't do that.
Yeah.
Well, and he already played Black Mask in the DCEU and Birds of Prey there, and he was amazing. Yeah, and I never would have thought that he would have pulled off what he did there, but he was pretty amazing. So, but yeah, I mean, we'll have to see. There's a lot of casting offer news out there, so it'll be very interesting to see how soon we get an answer regarding this with Brolin and where they move on next. Timothy Olyphant, by the way, I could see him doing it too, but he's older. He's definitely older. And if you don't know him, yeah.
It's a T. Okay, so that also
yeah.
kind of limits it.
Yeah.
I mean,
He
a
is
lot of
56. Okay. But yeah,
From
he's in
Mandalorian.
Justified, Deadwood. He's in The Mandalorian as a gunslinger in that too. He's a gunslinger in a lot of stuff. So he could hit it. He was in the terrible 2007 Hitman movie.
He looks like an older Hal Jordan.
Yeah,
Huh.
Yeah.
I could see it. But yeah, I agree. Miles Teller, Glenn Powell would both be great, especially because they've already played the fighter pilot. But it really does seem like they're going with the older age. So, but we'll have to see. Tune in with us. Keep in touch. We'll be updating you whether it's a cold open or a Week in Geek. We got your back. Now let's get to the show. And welcome in. Hello, everybody. What is up to the audience out there? Thank you for joining us here tonight. I'm your host, David. Here with me are my co-hosts, JD and Caleb. And we are returning to Middle Earth to cover The Rings of Power Season 2, Episodes 1 through 3. We've got a 3-episode premiere, so we're going to jump into all that shortly. While you're here, kill some time by hopping onto our socials, giving us a follow. TikTok, X, Instagram at WhySoCitiusPod, as always. Check out some of our recent episodes. We just had a comic review on Grant Morrison's Animal Man just dropped with returning guest Yoo-Hoo Comic Review. JD here just dropped a very educational and informational Who is the Red Hulk Novice Nerd. Very timely for the movies about to come out. Go ahead and give that a listen. And we also reviewed Alien Romulus in our most recent Week in Geek episode. Talked about the Acolyte cancellation, a couple other hot topics. And if for some reason you missed Rings of Power Ultimate episode, get on back there, and then maybe you'll be even more prepared for this episode. It's a circle. It all ties in. So let's just get into it. There's a good amount to talk about. 3 episodes here, The Rings of Power. I'm just going to do a quick recap of all 3. We're not going to go episode by episode per se. We're just going to kind of take on some of the main points and just discuss our return to Middle Earth. So we get brought back to Middle Earth. Oh, by the way, full spoilers, obviously. If you have not watched these episodes, you will get spoiled. So let's get into the recap. We get brought back to Middle Earth with a flashback showing Sauron, Adar, and the orcs at the beginning of the Second Age following Morgoth's defeat. We see Sauron giving a campaign speech on why the orcs should vote Sauron for their Second Age president before he gets the Julius Caesar treatment. We then rejoin the elves in the Rings of Power, with Elrond stealing them in fear of being a pawn of Sauron, only for the elves to outvote him and wield all 3. We see Halbrand return to Mordor to discuss things with Adar before eventually going to Lindon to treat with Celebrimbor and convince him to make rings for humans and dwarves. What? He later reveals himself to Celebrimbor as Anatar, the Lord of Gifts. Meanwhile, Galadriel, Elrond, and King Gil-galad plan on sending a force to intercept Sauron at Lindon. You're a little late. Back in Khazad-dûm, the dwarves lose their touch with the mountain along with their light and crops as Durin and Durin continue their feud. They eventually make their way to Lindon to treat with Celebrimbor and discuss the Rings of Power for them, which will heal their mountain and save their people. Back in the Southlands, you'll never believe it, but Isildur's alive! And the dopest horse since Shadowfax, Beric, finds him in a spider cave and creeps everybody out who is watching that. Why do you keep doing this to us with the spiders? And last but certainly not least, that's the correct order, we join our favorite storyline with Nori and the Stranger as they traverse Middle-earth to make their way to Rhûn. They encounter lackeys of a dark wizard who wishes to capture the Stranger, and he's definitely not Sauron. Also, Poppy joins the gang. And episode 3 ends with Isildur, Arondir, and fan favorite Theo getting into some trouble with men of the Southlands and some abnormally tall beings. And that's a wrap on the first 3 episodes of The Rings of Power. So, real quick, I just want to get your guys' overall just impression from all 3 episodes. The return of this show. I'll say I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the overall return as a whole. I think I had issues. It could have been much better, but I still enjoyed it. I enjoyed starting each episode after. Looked forward to the next one, and I'm pretty excited for the rest of the season. So I think it did its job. It could have been done better, but it did its job. Lub, what'd you think of the premiere here?
I was kind of hesitant at first. I don't know why. I was not super down to get back into Middle Earth, but right when I started it, I was like 15 minutes into the episode, and I was like, oh yeah, we're back. Like, I love this first season. So, and it's such a huge cast of characters. Like, some of the characters weren't even in the first 2 episodes. Like, it's a big, wide range of characters. So, I do like that, and yeah, I'm excited for the season.
Nice. JD?
Yeah, pretty solid start. I like how the story's way more direct than season one. It's like there's one big problem going on and one thing. Like we are bouncing around a lot from the dwarves to Numenor. I don't love the Numenor stuff. I really don't love that screen time, but I like the Sauron stuff, and even that dragged on a little bit with him and Adar. Seems like they're taking a step back on his story a little bit. Same with the Stranger, but it's way more direct, so it's easier to follow and just hang on to it because season one took quite a few episodes to like establish a story. It was all over the place, so I like that part about it.
Agreed. Numenor was so forgettable that I forgot to include them in the recap, but we did revisit Numenor, by the way. They had elections. I don't know how I missed it. I cracked like 3 different election puns in that recap and somehow forgot about the actual election that happens. But yeah, we go back to Numenor. But, dude, so I agree with what you just said there, JD. And a lot of people are complaining, as always, it's just going to happen, about lore change and them changing certain events and changing the timing of it. But I saw somebody describe it, and I liked the description. And they said, well, the book, the Silmarillion, all these ages and stuff were more event-based. The show is making it more character-based. So, yes, some things are rushed. Some people are there when they weren't actually there in the Silmarillion or whenever these things happen. But it's character-focused, and it's bringing us the story of these characters rather than being just an event-based kind of fire and blood, jump from event to event to event. They're getting us to have stakes with these characters, you know, and to be involved. And I can't think of the actual word I'm looking for. But, yeah, so I like that explanation. So I agree. Real quick, so we'll just throw it out there. What was your favorite episode out of the first 3, JD?
I think the first one. I really loved that opening scene. I thought that was really badass. And then all the talk about the rings, all the drama involving the rings was pretty captivating. A very easy story to follow. Just getting down to the story was a lot of fun. Seeing Gil-galad and, you know, the whole, just like I said, the drama with Elrond, Gil-galad, Galadriel, the rings, that was nice. And then seeing the Stranger again, his big tornado scene, that wasn't the first episode, was it? That was the second episode, I think.
Yeah, that was 2 or 3. I don't remember which.
Yeah, I think
3. Yeah.
That was 3, okay. That was a pretty cool scene, even though I don't like them kind of digressing on his powers. He seemed to have a good control over it at the end of season 1, so it feels like we're taking a step back with that, but it was still pretty cool. Episode 1 was probably my favorite, though.
Okay. Love?
Probably 1 or 2. 3 was a little bit slower for me. There was a couple.
Yeah.
I mean, the Anatar stuff was cool, but with Durin showing up. But yeah, it was a little slower. I think maybe 2. When does Anatar when does Halbrand meet up with Celebrimbor? Is that 1 or 2?
2.
End of 1. Well, yeah, he gets to Linden at
He
the end
doesn't
of
get let
1,
inside,
and then
though.
Celebrimbor comes and treats with him
Yeah.
in the second episode. Yeah.
Yeah.
Ben.
Maybe 2 then. Right?
Inside joke. Interesting. So we're kind of all over. So JD's was the first. Caleb, yours is 1 or 2, and mine's 2 or 3 actually. So I actually liked the third one. It was slow at points, but we did get. I love the Anatar thing, and I liked the Isildur and Arendir scenes. They had a pretty couple of dope action sequences, and I liked how it was kind of building up some ominous stuff. Yeah, that almost made me not want to pick that. Episode 1, I think it got off to a bad start for me. I personally wasn't a huge fan of the flashback, and so I think that set me on not the greatest start, and I think we got too much time with Nori and the Stranger in that first episode. I think that did something too that I was kind of like, but it was still fine. It was fine. I would just say 2 or 3 was my favorite. So let's get into what we're all talking about right now. Let's talk about, have you heard of Sauron? Let's talk about that guy. Sauron, Halbrand, Anatar, any other names he wants to come up with. Let's just cover that guy. So we're going to get into the flashback. And real quick, just a refresher for those that may still be a bit confused as to what has led to this scene, how we got here, who the hell these people are.
I was
So
confused
super
to
brief.
start.
Me
Straight
too.
up. And well, I'm a little confused about some aspects of it too, based on what we saw in the prologue last season, and then that. But we'll get into that. But so the events that led into this, Middle Earth. There's angelic. So at the very start of time, no, I'm not gonna go that far. But there are angelic beings known as the Valar. That are basically like the angels of the world, and the elves always refer to them the Valar, gifts from the Valar. Anatar refers to them. Well, one of those Valar's name was Morgoth, or eventually was Morgoth, and he turned against them and started a war. This war was known as the War of Wrath, and it's way too complex for me to dive into right now. But just know we get some extra beings from this event in the First Age, the War of Wrath. The Valar created something called the Maiar, or a Maya, to fight against the darkness Morgoth created and to bring balance, kind of like, the Force did with Anakin to Plagueis and Palpatine. There you go, a little tie-in. And Gandalf, Saruman, and Sauron are all of the Maya. So they're all those beings. So that's kind of the connection there. And they were all brought in initially to fight against the evil of Morgoth. Morgoth corrupted and twisted elves during this war, creating what we now know as orcs. So that's how we got to the orcs there. Morgoth corrupted them, twisted them, and created this new species, essentially. And then Morgoth has been defeated. And Sauron, who was his top lieutenant during the War of Wrath. So this is where we get to in this flashback scene. So we're at the start of the Second Age. Morgoth's defeated. The First Age is over. Second Age, there's a power vacuum. Sauron's trying to step up and take his place of his former master. And he's trying to bring the Orcs Legion with him at this point to continue his quest to take over Middle-earth. And that aspect right there, that scene got me confused. But so let's talk about it. We get the flashback. The actor ruined this for me, bro. He looks like Martin Sheen is cast as Sauron in this, and I just could not take it seriously. I just didn't understand the casting choice, the way he was speaking, the way he called himself Sauron, where Sauron is an insult that the elves actually named him. That was not his name. That was an insult that he was given, essentially. So the fact that he's calling himself Sauron and he's giving this like speech to the orcs about why they should follow him, after we saw the prologue of him in the full-on Sauron armor and everything, banging the staff, and they're all kneeling. So I'm confused how we got from that to where he's pleading for them to join him, and nobody wants to join him because he's obviously just like a clown the way he's speaking with these. I don't know. So I didn't get how we got to that point and why he's dressed as like a royal elf instead of in his Sauron armor. Like, they know he's Sauron. He's not in disguise right now. So why is he dressed as this dude? Why is he kneeling to Adar? I don't know. Though it just those were my problems with this flashback scene. It just didn't exactly land for me. JD, I know you're on the opposite end, so tell us why you like this scene.
Wait, first, let me ask you a couple questions. Stuff about Morgoth and all that stuff. Can you get that from the Silmarillion?
Morgoth, yeah.
So is that all that stuff you explained? You could get that from that book.
Yes.
Okay.
Well,
that's dope.
I think every single part of that, yeah, because the Silmarillion is just a ton of different events in the First Age and the second as well. But yeah, that Morgoth's in there.
And my second question is, before the events of Rings of Power, did we ever see Sauron in full? Not we as an audience, but was Sauron ever in full armor? Because that prologue I kind of thought was flashing forward quite a bit before Lord of the Rings. But did he wear the armor before these events here?
That's a good point.
That's a good point. I'm not entirely sure when the armor first made it. So maybe his armor is inspired from that crown that was shown. Like, that was the prototype for his armor, and maybe that scene where he's got the staff and is at full power is after that. If that's the case, that does help a lot for me. If that's the order of things, so that's interesting.
For sure, because I was under the impression Halbrand was on his way to the armor eventually by the end of this series. Like, he's never been in armor, I assumed, but he's getting there by the end of Rings of Power.
Interesting. That you might be onto something there. I like it. Thank you. That helps. That helps my brain with this a little bit more.
But I was confused, man, because I thought they recasted Halbrand at first. I was like, this blonde dude looking pretty feminine, with the whole thing going on with the orcs and all that. It was super strange. I just liked it because it was so dark and violent. It was like the darkest, most violent thing we've seen in the Middle-earth universe on screen. Right. It was crazy. And it was just really fascinating to see that, his huge explosion of power, and then the whole goo thing, his goo body was a little too much for me, but at the same time I was like glued to the screen, so that's cool in a way. If you're glued to the screen, that's good. But I would have rather him do like what I've heard about him being some kind of like floating ball of energy, because I'm pretty sure I've explained that kind of I've heard that kind of a description with Sauron, Gandalf, Saruman as their state of being before they were turned into people. But so the goo is weird, but that whole thing was just really fascinating, very dark, but also very confusing. And then you see him become Halbrand, and then you see, because I was also under the impression that these events took place after season 1. I didn't know it was a flashback until we see the boat crash and then he meets Galadriel. So I was actually kind of happy to see that as a tie-in to give me like what the hell is going on here. Like, oh, okay, this is just what was going on before Galadriel met him.
Right.
But I thought it was a pretty sick scene.
You're right. So we've gotten some violent death scenes in Lord of the Rings, but it's always an orc because it's not human blood, it's orc blood, so they can get way more brutal with it and show it as a PG-13. Sauron got straight up murked, and I guess the reason they can do it is because he technically turned into sludge instead of red blood going everywhere. But bro, that was pretty brutal. That was straight up Julius Caesar getting just wrecked by his senators around him.
Yeah.
It was pretty sick. Lub, how'd you like it?
I liked it more before you explained it, so you kind of ruined it for me. But
Well, JD helped though.
No,
He kind of turned the tides.
I loved it when he said, "I am your only future," and he like turns and you see like the black coming across his forehead, like he's about to like change form from an elf or something. And then after they kill him, it changes the entire environment of the surrounding. Everything turns into snow. It's like, damn, this is a risky move. And also, this really kind of shows Sauron's flaws in his quest for power over everyone. If it's this easy for him to reincarnate, why put all of your power into one ring to where you can be defeated? Like, he could have just gone on. I mean, I'm sure there's an explanation, but for now it seems like, you're basically immortal. Like, why take this risk and have everything in a ring, even though the ring is the one to rule them all? So, like, that's obviously his end game, is to rule everyone, but it also is your downfall at the same time.
Yeah, so I do, and this isn't my explanation. I actually saw somebody saying this. I think it was Ryan on Screen Crush.
Okay.
I forgot. I saw some clip on Instagram. I was scrolling through, but he said this event of him being sludge and having to survive off of eating bugs and rats and all this stuff. His theory was kind of like this was like humiliating for him, and he kind of vowed like never again am I gonna let myself have to survive from sludge or whatever. And so he created a Horcrux, essentially, if you're familiar with Harry Potter stories, in which his soul can be bound in an all-powerful object to which he doesn't have to resort back to sludge, living off the insects of the earth and whatnot. And he was probably still vulnerable if people knew the sludge was there or something. I don't know, he light on fire like venom. I don't know how it works, but yeah, so I did hear that explanation and was like, okay. But I think some part of Sauron and why he's so iconic is the mystery. And so I think kind of part of it, when you show every aspect of him getting back to Halbrand, it kind of takes a little bit away from me, especially when I'm not like crazy about how they did it. A lot of the mystique of Sauron builds that shadow that, what's Varys say in Game of Thrones? A small man can wield a very large shadow. Well, Sauron can wield an even larger shadow when he takes over Middle-earth, and we don't know how he did it. Not a great comparison, but just move on. But yeah, I don't know. So it was hit and miss with me. I will say I didn't like that they showed the boat thing with Galadriel, because it almost kind of showed that it was pure coincidence. Like, Halbrand wasn't thinking of Galadriel when he got on that ship and they got eaten up by the sea monster. Now, Sauron Halbrand, he might have like influenced the sea monster, and that's why Galadriel survived, and now he's stuck with just them two alive. Like, maybe he influenced that, but it felt like it just showed that it was pure coincidence and not what I thought of before of some part of Sauron's plan where he planned to run into Galadriel out there. So yeah, I wasn't crazy about that personally, but
And it was kind of funny when he was on the ship. The other guy asked, like, what haunts you so? He's like, I've done evil. And he's like, don't worry, I've done bad things too. And it's like, no, bro, like, you don't know who you're talking to right now. Like, this is pure evil.
Yeah. Also, that old guy kind of tried to have like a good talk with him, where what did he say? Basically, like, there's always a better path for you, and it looks like Halbrand's like almost thinking about his past and stuff. So, like maybe come into the light. And so, what if the showrunners just went full Leslie Headland and wrote Sauron a redemption arc, and he's actually the protagonist here because he's a Maya. So like just like Gandalf, he could redeem himself and actually heal Middle Earth. Like what if they try to make Sauron like the anti-hero or like the hero of this story? You think it's possible?
I don't think they're gonna do it.
Good, because I will cry. I will shed tears. But yeah, it was interesting. But how about him returning to Adar? Lub, what do you think about this? Why do you think he went back to visit with Adar in the form of Halbrand?
Yeah, that was interesting. I mean, I guess Adar never found out he was Sauron, right? He just thinks he's the king of the Southland. So, I guess Halbrand thinks it's his quickest way to power, where he can go back, maybe try and become a lieutenant of this, and then of Adar, and then slowly take over the Orc. So, I'm sure he has a plan somewhere. And I mean, he let him go eventually, so I guess it works.
Yeah, that's fair. JD, what do you think about his capture and everything Halbrand did in there?
I felt like a step back. I don't know. We saw him at the end of season 1, like on top of the world, it seemed like, with his cloak going to Mordor. So it felt kind of slow for me just to see him back. Like, I want to see powerful Sauron keep moving forward and doing what he does. Plus, it was kind of meaningless. I mean, he just went over to Celebrimbor eventually. I don't know why they couldn't just write him going straight over there, because the whole Adar thing just made him seem kind of weak. And it wasn't that interesting, So, yeah, I was kind of whatever on it.
Straight up. I do have a theory, but I just want... The scene with him taking the collar off the wolf, and then he rides out of the village, and he hears the guy's screams as the wolf eats him, and Halbrand just, like, smiles. Like it was like a little prank that he just got that guy killed. It was kind of funny, but it was, yeah. The guy who has been saying... Praise, have you heard of Sauron? I want to serve Sauron. And he just kicked Sauron around and then got killed by him. He has no idea it was even him. So I think, and I guess somewhat of a spoiler alert, but it's not, because they're changing lore. This isn't how it's going. But my thought of why he went back there, because I was thinking the same thing. What was the point of that? We saw in the trailer, Eregion is attacked. The place, the elvish home there that the dwarves held to make. It's being attacked, and that's an event in the lore of Lord of the Rings called the Siege of Eregion. And so I think Halbrand's manipulating Adar to use his forces to kind of, almost like a false flag operation, where there's this attack coming now from the orcs, and now they really are like, okay, we need these rings. Like, evil's taking over the land. Okay, we got to do the rings thing. So I think he's using it as like a leverage of... He's going to get the orcs to attack the elves. He's going to cause more chaos, and that'll, in turn, make them more susceptible to being like, okay, we'll do the rings. So that's my thought. I'm not sure if that's the case, but I do know the orcs are going to attack Eregion at some point. We saw that in the trailer, so there had to have been a reason he did that. But it wasn't great. And I miss Joseph Malls. I don't know how to pronounce Benjen Stark. I miss him, man. So the recast of Adar, it's nothing against him. It's not like he's playing it bad, but it's just taken me a minute, man. I miss the old one. I think the old one looked more intimidating and mysterious, whereas this one, for some reason, just doesn't bring that intimidation factor for me. Yeah. So I'm struggling with that one, if I'm being honest, but.
Yeah, he's doing a good job though. You can tell he's a good actor. He's just different.
It's just different. He's gonna take some time. Take some time to heal. But we're talking about Sauron. Let's just hop into his next form here. Halbrand shows up to Celebrimbor, which we'll talk about the elves and whatnot soon. But he shows up to Celebrimbor and he's acting as Halbrand. And my issue last season was, how is he going to convince Celebrimbor again? He already got Celebrimbor to make the rings for the elves. How is he going to come back and yet again convince him to make more rings, especially when Galadriel just told him, don't treat with Halbrand, he's done. Foolishly enough, she didn't say he was Sauron, and I think the elves did a pretty piss-poor job of getting message to Celebrimbor to tell him, hey, Sauron's back, and he's probably heading back to your thing. Like, maybe send more than one rider to deliver this special letter. Like, y'all are elves, right? I
They
thought that was
quickly
pretty
showed
weak.
Those two people they showed that were dead were like the
Yeah.
messengers, right? It was just two random people. Like,
Yeah. But like send more. It's Sauron returning. You just got confirmation that Sauron created these rings. This
with
is like
Celebrimbor.
the utmost importance. Get to Celebrimbor. He needs to know this. You send 2 riders when you know Sauron's probably heading back that way too. Like that part got me because the elves are supposed to be wise. They're supposed to be insanely intelligent, and I was just like, that was pretty weak for me. But Celebrimbor doesn't know, so Halbrand shows up and he's very, very persistent. And I didn't know how he would make this change to the elf. He still looks like Halbrand, so I thought that was silly too. This really worked for me, dude. This whole thing with Halbrand manipulating Celebrimbor to be bitter that he created these rings to save the species of the elves. And it, like Oppenheimer, you know, he creates the bomb, and then as soon as he's done with his work, they take the bomb. They don't tell him anything about what they're doing with it, and he's cut off. And that's essentially what happened with the rings of Celebrimbor in his mind. And so Halbrand / Sauron just beautifully worked Celebrimbor's pride and his ego, which we saw flashes of last season. So I thought it was written really well, and it actually worked for me. And his whole explanation of him being Anatar, the Lord of Gifts, and he has to admit something, he's been lying. And he just manipulated him so well that it really worked better than I imagined it would have. So the transition from Halbrand to Anatar was solid for me. What did you guys think of it? Did it work?
Yeah, definitely. And I had the same thing at first. Like, he's just gonna stay the same actor but turn into an elf, but he manipulates him so well. And Celebrimbor he craves creating. He loves to create power. He loves to create weapons and rings and stuff. So like, he's the perfect partner for Sauron because he even lies to Gilgalad saying, "I'm gonna shut down the forge right now. No more rings are gonna be created." And it's like, bro, like you were like quick to turn on people because I don't think he thinks he's doing anything wrong though. I don't think he's doing it for evil intentions. He's like, this is my passion. This is what I was here for. Like, I'm gonna do this for the better of, you know, to save Middle Earth and save the elves. So
yeah.
It was written very well.
Yeah, I agree.
Love again.
It was definitely one of my favorite scenes, you know, really down to the story, and he worked him, and that irritated me because Galadriel literally told this guy not to speak to Halbrand, and he just gets worked by Halbrand. But again, why didn't Galadriel just tell him he was Sauron? Like, that seems like really important news.
She wouldn't even tell Elrond.
Yeah.
He had to find out on his own.
Right. I thought it was goofy when Celebrimbor he ate it up when he became Anatar. When Halbrand became Anatar, he was like 10-year-old me seeing Playboy magazine for the first time. He was all about it. Dude gets on his knees, starts
his pants off.
Bowing. Yeah.
So he goes like this.
But written very well, solid story stuff going on, and then, you know, just another transformation. I thought it was kind of weird how this dude just keeps transforming. He just kind of changes his hair. Just small, goofy little things, but really cool scene, pushing the story forward. Really good.
You would think if he was going to mask himself as a totally different species that he would change his face too, and not just like we just saw him change his face from the last. So that aspect, obviously that's for the show. They just didn't. Charlie Vickers is going to stay as Halbrand / Sauron, and that's for the show. But I would imagine he was never human in the Silmarillion. His fair form was elf, so there was never a Halbrand in that point of the story. But yeah, I think it did not seem to me like it was going to play out. And by the end of that 3rd episode, I was like, dude, you know, worked for me. It couldn't have worked better for me. I'm here for it. I'm here for Anatar being here now. Like, I was very skeptical, and I'm very happy to see how they were able to pull that off. And again, Celebrimbor, his ego was shown in season 1. I remember us talking about it. Like, he was like, "Oh, well, I'm kind of the greatest blacksmith ever. That's me." and he always talks about Fëanor, who is the legendary elf who I believe created the Silmarils and multiple other things. And
Mithril? Was it Mithril?
No, that was another guy who got hit by the lightning in the tree with the Balrog. I don't think that was Fëanor. It could have been. But anyways, they just did a good job at laying the groundwork of he has an ego, and his eyes are set on legacy. He wants to be a legend in the form of elvish smiths. So it was good. I liked it.
I can't wait till Galadriel meets Anatar. I want to see what her reaction is. Like, will she be fooled, or will she be
You
like,
look
"Hey,
familiar."
you're Halbrand, but an elf now"? Like,
No, she's got to know, because I think
Right.
that's why he used that. And he's like, I've been lying. Look, I'm an elf, you know, blah blah, or what? I'm a gift from the Valar. But I don't know why he's wearing like plain rucksack threads when he's supposed to be like this angelic being who came down. And he's wearing just pretty basic, you know, whatever. It's a nitpick. But the last thing I want to touch with him is, so he never actually touched the elvish rings when they made it in season 1. We never saw Halbrand get his hands on the rings, and we saw it in this one. He got his hands on the ring, or on the mithril. He touched it, and you could tell he was like infusing it with whatever dark magic there was. But so I like that, because the elvish rings are kind of the ones that weren't super corruptible, whereas the dwarves and the men fell a lot more to them. So I liked that touch where they showed him actually getting his hands on it this time.
Right. I definitely noticed that he's like, "Nah, hand it to me first. I'm gonna put it in there," and he like holds it for a second and then puts it in. Like,
He says like a spell or something.
Wingardium Leviosa. All right. Sorry, before we leave the villains, last thing I forgot to mention. So we saw Adar and the orcs. Adar is sending his orcs to follow Sauron on his trip to Lindon. And we get this scene that a lot of people are having issues with. And it's the scene of the orc pleading to not go to war because he wants a safe space for his family. This caused a lot of backlash from fandom online, saying, oh, we're just humanizing orcs. Now they have kids and a wife and are worried about their family. Like, that's not an orc. I get that. I'm curious if that bothered you guys at all when it showed the orc wife and the baby and everything, that orc pleading not to go to war. Did that take you out of it or bother you at all, JD?
It was off-putting, but that's about it. I was just a little like, what? I mean, it seemed a little too human, but I didn't really put it in those terms in my head. I just felt kind of weird about it.
Straight up. All right. Lub?
yeah, I definitely prefer the ravenous orcs from Lord of the Rings, where they just fight and kill each other over nothing. But Adar does treat them differently, like we talked about in our Rings of Power Ultimate episode.
True.
He treats them like children. He talks about how they have heartbeats and they're just like us. They're not they're not these corrupted monsters.
They'd be
that everyone
dead if
thinks
they
are.
didn't have heartbeats.
He
Sorry,
said it, okay?
continue. I know. No, I know.
So maybe that's like the way Adar raised them, as because he's their father. He raised them to be more mortal, more like humans in a way, I guess. So I could see it with his batch, but not the wider.
Yeah, look, the Third Age Mordor orcs, they came from a rough upbringing. They didn't have family. No, I don't know, but yeah, that's a good way of putting it, though. They are different from what we've seen, and I think it's silly, but it was like a 5-second scene, and I heard the backlash before I watched the episode, and then I saw the scene. I was like, that was it? It just showed the baby, and he said, we're safe here, and yeah, again, I thought it was silly, but it doesn't matter. As long as they don't build on that and like we start seeing a storyline built from this orc's family, then I'm good with it. But you start doing that, you lose me.
I would take a 30-second scene of him back at dinner with his orc family, and she's like, "You told me you weren't going to go out to war again." He's like, "I have to go one more time. All right, it's my last one."
Said you were going to talk to him. I'll talk to him tomorrow, Karen. Okay.
It says stay.
Oh, the baby's crying. The baby's crying again.
I'm kind of down for that.
Okay, wait. That big ass troll. It speaks
Yeah, that was my
English?
next thing.
It
How'd you like
speaks
it?
English?
Yeah, well, trolls and the Hobbit spoke English.
Oh yeah, you're right.
The only one that didn't was Lord of the Rings, the cave trolls. But the trolls, and in the books, the trolls do speak. They're a little stupid. Oh, almost. Good catch, Dave. They're a little stupid though, but they speak though.
Never go full stupid.
Big go. I thought that was dope. Yeah, sorry.
Same.
So
No, I thought it was dope. I just don't think he's not going to do anything to Sauron. Sauron seems way too powerful for a troll. I mean, he's in his little human form. He seems like he could be hurt, but we saw him get stabbed 30 times and be fine. I don't know what this troll's going to do. He's too slow, and Sauron's he's a freaking wizard, but I don't feel threatened for Sauron by that troll. I just think he's kind of a cool character, and he clearly wants to go kill Sauron. That's going to make for a pretty sick scene.
Yeah, I mean, we're gonna see some elves get torn up by this guy for
Yeah.
sure when he's on his way over there. And I thought the design looked cool. The face actually kind of resembled the cave troll from the Fellowship of the Ring. It had similar, so I thought they nailed that. It looked good. I love he just walks up holding an orc's head, the messenger's head, as he just walks up. Like, I thought it was cool. So I'm stoked to see the troll go further. Yeah, he's not gonna be a match for Sauron, but he's gonna tear some people up. So I thought that was dope.
Thank God that rag was covering his junk, because man, I don't want to see that. It was barely covering it though, and I couldn't help but take a peek and
The
see
hound
it.
all over again.
What's under there? You know, do I want to see that? Maybe I do actually.
Hold on. I think I need to think about my life right now. All right. So outside of the trolls, big swinging wiener there. It was cool though. I liked it. So let's get out of the darkness and the evil. Let's head on over to the elves. We haven't talked about them. So we open up with Elrond stealing the rings, lecturing Galadriel and the High King Gil-galad before jumping off the waterfall, saying, it was Sauron. She didn't say anything. This whole thing with Elrond fighting against the elves and stuff, JD, did it work for you? Did you care at all? Or
I liked the drama of it and the story. I just can't stand Elrond in this show. Like, I really can. He just seems
his
like
face or
kind of, I don't know, his whole demeanor. He's
Stupid
too
little
self-righteous, and he's wearing his Frodo eyes half the time. And
Frodo
I'm just not a big fan of him for some reason.
straight up.
But story-wise, it was good. I do like the argument. I do like the kind of the civil war that this is causing between elves. And he's right, isn't he? Do the elves get corrupted by these rings? Does everybody get corrupted? I know, we all know about the one ring of power, but
Right.
I don't remember anything about the effects that the other rings of powers had to men and dwarves and elves.
Well, Galadriel still has hers, like I incorrectly spoke about in Lord of the Rings.
Did you?
Yeah.
Remember,
Oh, I
you
didn't
corrected me
remember
on
that.
it afterwards.
Probably did, yeah.
And
Oh, yeah. Okay, I see what you're saying. Yeah. Nenya or whatever the name of that ring is. But they kind of corrupt, but I think Elrond's just worried about it being a possibility of a bridge to Sauron. Like, he knows your mind now, and the rings do speak to them. We get a line where it says, the rings have kindled your ability to see what has not yet come to pass. So basically he's saying they're getting glimpses of the future, and they're having these visions. So I think it's just dangerous being connected to him at all and letting him have a two-way path,
yeah, and you said it earlier that the elves aren't as corruptible as men and dwarves. Right. And it was Elrond's dad, right? And he was talking about how if these were in evil hands, they would do terrible things, but in good hands, they could do good things. And he's like, yeah, you should just trust your friends, and if you think they're going down the wrong path, then open your eyes for them and guide them. I really liked that scene.
I don't
Yeah.
think that's his dad, though.
It's
that wasn't
not. His dad is a star that's just floating through the sky right now. And I'm not even
Of course.
he was just turned into a star when he died, but it's an interesting one. But yeah, his name is Círdan. Círdan.
Oh.
He's like one of the wisest of the elves and stuff.
Okay, I was curious how he just got a ring after that.
Well,
Yeah, they didn't
I was-
explain it very well, but
yeah, because
He's like,
he was
"Yeah,
taking the ring away from them at first, and then a couple scenes later, he was
double
there
crossed.
wearing the rings with them. So I was confused by that.
They probably spoke to him.
so it did. Remember, he took the boat out to the middle of the lake and was going to dump the rings into that massive hole.
Mm-hmm.
And then there kept being this sound. Megan was the one pointing it out, actually. She's like, the rings keep speaking to them. And the first couple times, I was like, I think that's just the score matching
That's
up
what
with
I
them
thought, I
having a mental, oh, I need to do... Like when Elrond jumped off the waterfall, I was like, no, I think he just decided, okay, no, I can't let them have it. But then it happened 3 or 4 other times, the same tone of the sound design. And it was like the ring speaking to them. And as soon as that tone came on, Círdan or Círdan or whatever pulled the rings back in, and then the next scene we see him bringing it to King Gil-galad.
Okay.
So he was kind of being manipulated. So they are, able to be manipulated a little bit, I guess. He did have great lines though, and he also dropped one of the hardest bars I've ever heard to defend listening to R. Kelly music. He basically had a line where he said, "Judge the works, leave the judgment of the artist to the judgers or whatever. Taking the beauty of their art and don't base it on the person who created it." And it was like, wow.
Interesting.
Straight up R. Kelly fan right here, but it worked though. Yeah.
It's been a tough look for Gilgalad, especially now. A lot of people about the book readers, like,
Right.
he thinks that Galadriel was just been lying to them the whole time. Like, she knew that Halbrand was Sauron and didn't tell them about it. Like, why would she do that? Obviously, that wasn't her intention. She's been trying to take him down the whole time. Like, so I don't get where he's coming from, and he, like, obviously wants a ring for himself, and so it's just not been a great look for him.
Yeah, he also sent Galadriel back to Valinor last season because she kept saying, evil is still in this land. Sauron has not been wiped clean. He said, no, it's fine. Everything's gone. Go back to Valinor. And then right after tells Elrond, yeah, so there's this darkness taking over Middle-earth, and we're actually dying here right now. It's like, you totally just gaslit Galadriel. We're like, there's no evil here. Go home. And it's like, you knew? So, yeah, I'm not the biggest fan of the High King Gil-galad right now either. He's a little obnoxious.
Elrond did have a bar, though, when he was talking to Galadriel, when she meets him in the little hut by the river or lake. And
The River Hut.
River hut, yeah. And she says, in my heart, I know the rings aren't corrupted. And he says, but are you? So, and that's true. Like, Galadriel does have that kind of dark side in her where she wants that revenge and having that ring. Like, I could see her using that ring for maybe something not so good. So that was good.
Yeah, she can be. I don't know. Quick side note: have you seen the Hobbit movies, especially the third one, the Battle of the Five Armies?
I never.
So there's a scene in there, and it's totally not from the books. They just threw it in for the movie, but it is kind of dope. And it's Galadriel and Saruman and Elrond fighting the Nine as Gandalf is knocked out and on the ground or whatever, and so they're fighting off the spirits of the Nine. And Galadriel, like, she walks up to one of the orcs and is like, you know, I'm taking Gandalf out of here. I'll destroy you, whatever. He steps up. She just flicks her hand and it just, like, disintegrates. The orc just disintegrates, spine showing it, like, just blasts it into oblivion. So she gets pretty damn powerful going into the future there. But anyways, that was a side note. So, yeah, we get the 3 ring bears of the elves. We get the little overhead shot that we saw in the Fellowship of the Ring prologue, which is kind of a cool little nod. It was forced. You know, I'm not sure why all 3 of them held their hands out like that to form a triangle, but it made for a good shot. So, any other last things to say about the elves before we move into the dark underground world?
There was that one thing with Gil-galad, and he was telling Galadriel how he was talking about Sauron. He says, once the deceiver obtains a being's trust, he gains the ability to sculpt their very thoughts, to deceive not only their heart and mind, but their eyes and ears, to alter their very reality. And that seemed like a red flag for Galadriel, like what you just said, Glub, about Elrond talking about, are you the one that's corrupted? Like, he just explained that whole thing about him corrupting realities and stuff and thoughts. So it's like, is she really just going down this dark path? Is she being controlled?
Dude.
And
Yeah, sorry.
And another thing he does is when they were talking about, they were talking about the rings, and he, like, hides his ring when they were talking about Sauron and the rings. Like, he's starting to have that possessive feeling over his ring already.
Yeah.
It would be a cool character arc for her to turn evil, or, like, turn kind of to the dark side and then come back. You know, not like full, like...
You're going to piss readers off.
Yeah, right? But, like, not just the ring corrupts her in a way to where she makes a couple questionable decisions, you know?
Right. Yeah, and it does make you wonder. Again, we see the classic dark side scene of her in the Fellowship of the Ring. You would have a queen, JD.
Yeah, that one.
But it makes you wonder, does she have that dark side because of Sauron's grip from these experiences? She had this run-in with Sauron, and now she has this dark side of her that's getting unleashed at that point when she talks about wielding the ring. So that could be a connection. Well, you know, it could work. But speaking of dark things, let's go down to some dark caves. Go back to Khazad-dûm. I believe the eruption of Mordor is what causes this earthquake and everything else that goes throughout the mountain. And these rocks break, you know, and all their areas of light crumble. They're in the darkness. They needed that light for their plants and their crops. So now the whole mountain is worrying about food. They don't have light. They're singing. The dwarf women, which, by the way, Dwarf women are supposed to have beards when they talk about it and other stuff. They did give a couple of them some deep sideburns. They only made it to about their cheekbones, but they did have some hairy ass sideburns. So you're meeting them halfway. But yeah, so they sing to the mountain, which usually works, and they realize we've lost our connection to the mountain. It's not working. Something is going wrong here. And we see Doran getting bullied in the mines because he's at odds with his dad, so he's no longer royalty, so he has to take up the place of a normal dwarf, which I thought was goofy. He's Prince Doran, and he's in the mines getting bullied, and he even says, like, touch me again, and I'll snap your hand, and then he just gets pushed on his face, and he just wears it. It's like, bro, he would at least fight, right? He's Doran, bro. He would put up some sort of fight, so I didn't really enjoy that. But I enjoyed returning to the dwarves. I love Disa, the actress who plays her, kills it. I like Doran, and I like his father too. All the scenes with his father, I think the acting is just really good for all the dwarves. Love, what'd you think about our trip to Khazad-dûm?
Yeah, Disa has really good advice for him when he talks about how you and your dad are so alike. You're both so stubborn. You're both so strong-headed. That's why you guys don't get along. But then at the same time, she's pushing him for these rings. Like, this is what you must do. If you don't tell your dad about it, I'm going to do it. Like, you know, we need these. So, but, you know, obviously she doesn't know the what could go wrong with that with Sauron.
You're right.
And how they're saying that it's Elrond's fault that the earthquake happened. Like, there's word going around that it's all Elrond's fault. Like, what the?
Of course, it's the elves. It's just elf propaganda. Yeah. Yeah, it was solid. JD, how'd you like him?
I really liked Durin and his wife, but I thought there was a little too much screen time there. I was getting a little worn down from Khazad-dûm scenes, and it seemed like it was just building up to the mountain falling apart, so that leading them to accepting the rings, because there would be no story thread leading to them accepting the rings if the mountain wasn't falling apart. I think they could have done that a little quicker. Just, yeah, it felt like we spent too much time there, and it just felt like a couple too many filler scenes. You know, they could have condensed it. But I just love the Durin, the actor, does a great job there. His wife, they're really solid characters.
Yeah. It makes you wonder if Sauron actually planned this, because we're seeing a lot of stuff in this season where it's seeds that Sauron or Halbrand planted in the first season. He planted seeds in Numenor. He planted seeds in Lindon. He planted seeds. Well, he was never in Khazad-dûm, but he had interactions with the Southlands and other things. And all these seeds are, coming to fruit, and that is divisiveness, doubt on what's going on, the darkness going on. I see a lot of stuff like, oh, he set this up in the first season. So it makes me wonder if he knew that this was going to cause chaos in Khazad-dûm as well. Yeah, I do. I see what you're saying there, though. There wasn't a whole lot of substance for the amount of screen time they did have. I did have two thoughts. One, I think it's pretty funny how Elrond's the only elf who protested the Rings of Power and was wary about them. And Durin is the only dwarf who is speaking up, saying, I don't trust this. Yeah. This feels wrong. Like, the two best friends are the only ones who can see that this could be a bad thing. Like, so I liked that. But I have a bit of a theory, and it's not a spoiler because, honestly, I'm not that familiar with the dwarf story going back into Lord of the Rings and the lore of it. I'm pretty in the dark there. But, how they got to where they were in the trilogy or where they weren't because they were all dead. But so I think we get the trailer of King Doran wearing one of the rings, and his son tells him to take it off. It's, take it off, blah, blah, and he gives him a backhand and sends him flying like 20 feet in the trailer. So I think that King Doran is going to go a little power crazy from this ring, and he's actually going to do what he specifically banned, which is he's going to know the mithril was the cause of this power of this ring he's wearing, and now he's going to be like, we need to dig up all the mithril, and to the point where it's dangerous, and that's how they end up unearthing the Balrog. So I think the rings are going to drive Doran to delving too far, as we know the dwarves ended up doing to uncover this Balrog. So that's my theory on it. And again, I swear, not a spoiler. I don't know much about the dwarf stuff, but I think that's what's going to happen.
I like that a lot. Yeah. It'll be sad, though, because they just reconnected, and it sucks to see father and son fighting, and it was nice to see them reconnecting. I don't want to see him get power hungry and start acting like a complete dick to his son again. Dude, that'll be sad, but that's a solid theory for the future.
I know. I like their relationship, especially when they start getting along, and because they're just so freaking headstrong that Again, I think it's acted well too, which is I think makes the scenes interesting.
The one scene of Durin being skeptical, where he says, when he's talking to Anatar, and he says, Elrond never mentioned you before. Like, who are you again? And then when they walk out, he's like, Elrond would never say those nice things about me to his wife. Like, he must not know who Elrond is if he speaks to him like that. So he's skeptical from the start. He sees this kind of like deception that's going on with these rings.
He's smart, bro. I like him. I really like Durin. So yeah, he's onto it. So we'll see what happens. It's gonna get dark though, that's for sure. Real quick, let's spend a ton of time talking about our favorite story plot line deal, and that's Stranger and Nori. So they're looking for Rune. It's just a Harfoot type traveling and quotes being dropped through the scenes. They sing their little song. Poppy joins them, yada, 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 whatever. I wasn't interested whatsoever. I wasn't even interested about the staff dreams he was having. Like, I just didn't care, especially because the staff looked pretty weak. The only thing I have to say about this plot line, you guys can say if you got anything else, but if they try to make this Dark Wizard Sauron, I'm going to flip out.
It's him,
He
bro.
even had the line of calling them halflings, what Sauron is in the trilogy. He only referred to the hobbits as the halflings. The halflings plants have slowed your mind. The halfling this and that. And he dropped halflings like in one of his first sentences. And if it's Sauron, I'm going to be pissed. But shout out Mance Rayder, the actor who played Mance Rayder. He's playing this Dark Wizard. But JD, anything to say on this storyline here?
No, it's a lot like going to Khazad-dûm. There's way too much screen time for nothing. The only two things of substance were his little, his dealing with his powers. The tree, that was interesting, and the tornado scene, that was interesting. But we even had that second Hobbit come to the picture, which I was just like, oh, man, might as well bring the whole family back from season 1. No, but it was a little too much. I'm just interested in the Stranger's evolution. That's it.
Straight up. And I'm pretty sure it's Gandalf, but yeah.
How'd she even find them, Poppy? She's like, oh, you guys didn't go very far.
Sang a song.
Just walk straight, I guess? I don't know.
You just sing a song, bro. You transport through Middle Earth.
And they're not very smart either. Like, rule 1, don't build a fire at night. Like, what
yeah,
are you doing?
rule 2, stop the bell from ringing.
Oh my god, I was so pissed off in that scene. She's just, Poppy
doing?
looks over and stares at it. Ding, 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 ding. Like, turn the fucking bell up.
Grab
idiot.
the rope.
Yeah, like, oh my god.
Yeah.
Frustrating. And they're trying to give him a name already. So I feel like we're going to get a nice, corny Gandalf.
Yeah.
Call
Oh,
you
and that was
Gandalf.
super goofy too. Well, you can't give somebody a name. They know their name. A name is blah blah. Brother, you had like 6 different names. You were Gandalf. You were Mithrandir. You were the Great Pilgrim. You were like
The
you had
Grey,
a
the
bunch of
White.
names. Yeah, like I don't want to hear it. Talking about a name so important, we get it. Just show us already and move on. Speaking of not really caring, Numenor, real quick. Isildur's friend's a real one, by the way, for stepping up and defending the queen
was
while
sick.
everybody was talking trash. He was the one who went to Middle Earth and actually fought alongside her. So I like that character. So he'll probably die, but... and we get the coronation, so they're about to officially make Muriel the queen because her father is dead. I will say the costume design on the Numenor coronation scene was on point. They looked really good. All the different costumes and everything else, it looked official. Like they looked rich, it looked clean. Yeah, it was sick. And then of course we get the big deal. So the Palantir is revealed by Elendil's terrible daughter. Everybody turns on Muriel because of the freaking the elf connection and using the Palantir and everything. And then in the middle of this coronation, who shows up but the freaking eagle? And they were all saying, Al Farazone even said if an eagle shows up, it'll be an omen like it was for your father during his coronation. But somehow it shows up this time, and people just start chanting Al Farazone, and it's like, oh, apparently they showed up for him instead of the queen who was actually being coronated in this thing. It was cool seeing the eagle and the omen they bring. But the Farazone thing was super annoying. And real quick again, Gray Eagles, there are ancient wise beings loyal to the Valar. They're like archangel-like beings who lived in the Undying Lands. They answer specifically to Manwë, who's the king of the Valar, and they served as messengers and spies throughout all 3 ages of Middle-earth's timeline.
Spies.
This is why they had such a close relationship with Gandalf, because the wizard was Amaya, who directly served under Manwë, who they served under as well. And they're interpreted as a sign of Manwë's approval. But again, that makes it kind of weird, that they shouted, yeah, it's for Pharazôn. And also, all of Pharazôn's supporters are against elves. And the sign of an eagle and all that are connected to the elves and their culture. So it was weird that they all started chanting, yeah, the eagle's here. Like, your whole deal is break away from the elves. And that somehow made him win the vote. I don't know. I love seeing the eagle, but I'm hoping it's a bad omen. I'm hoping the eagle is a bad omen and not what they thought. Like, he wasn't supporting Pharazôn.
Yeah, that doesn't really make sense to me either. And it's funny how the guy's like, you know, if the Palantir is not yours, then let's destroy it then. And she's like, no, I need that. Like, don't do it.
It's my precious.
But even the king, he said, you know, we're doomed. I forgot exactly what he said, but he basically said we're doomed. So I feel like this is a bad omen. And I felt like the Númenórean people were a little bit smarter or a little bit more advanced into, like, this eagle shows up and they're like, oh my god, yeah, woo! Like, they didn't seem like a real, like, culty type of people, you know?
Yeah. And again, it's an eagle, or it's an elvish cultural thing too, so even more so. It didn't really make sense that they all lost their minds at that. I
And it
don't
just
know.
dipped.
Yeah. JD, what'd you think of Númenor? Any thoughts?
No, dude, I didn't really care about anything going on in Númenor at all. I don't like the Queen Regent. The only interesting thing is the ball, the crystal ball that they got there that is like connected to Sauron, but I can care less.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you there too. So, till we see, Númenor is going to fall at some point. That is a major event in the Lord of the Rings lore. So when that happens, I might get some interest in it. But
where the eagle landed, that looks just like where they had the third battle in Return to the King. Not the third battle, the third movie, big battle.
Minas Tirith.
Minas Tirith. That's not Númenor. So why are they there?
So they're in Númenor right now. That's where they are. But Minas Tirith, the kings of Gondor, are lineage of Númenor. So the first king of Gondor and everything, they were people of Númenor. So I think it's just that's Númenor architecture, and they kind of built Minas Tirith to kind of resemble their home city of Númenor. So because they have that whole triangle little area there and a courtyard at the top, and so I think Minas Tirith was built to resemble that. So they, good attention to detail for them there, but
For sure.
okay. Last thing before we wrap it up, and that is Isildur and Arondir. So Beric obviously won't go back to Númenor, knows Isildur is alive. Elendil's really freaking out, crying, please come home. He goes, no, you guys are stupid. Isildur is obviously in the prologue of the Fellowship of the Ring. He is out there somewhere, and he takes off. And I felt like Ron and Harry Potter, like, why spiders? Why does it have to be spiders every time? Like, couldn't it be butterflies? Why does it have to be spiders? And we get this spider scene. We got one in The Mandalorian. We got it in Harry Potter. We've gotten it in Lord of the Rings. And I've gotten over arachnophobia, but it's still not enjoyable to watch it on screen like that with all these massive spiders crawling out. And the CGI looked good, which makes it worse. But man, that was a creepy little scene. And I think there's a bigger tie to that. But you guys got any thoughts on the spider scene?
I loved the spider scene, dude. I thought it was sick. They looked great, and it was just so creepy. Yeah. It was so Lord of the Rings-ish, what you get with the whole spider thing and Frodo. So I was digging it, and I liked what led to it. The horse was attached, and he wouldn't listen to the people, Isildur's dad and stuff like that. And he takes off, finds Isildur, but they kills one orc along the way and just drags the other one. I thought he was a badass little horse.
R2-D2 in horse form. This man could do it all.
Did you
like it?
I was kind of getting alien vibes from when the eggs are on the wall and then
they start hatching.
The legs pop out of the. Yeah. Oh my god, I hate. And then it like crawls on his back and he's like trying to get it off his back. I was like, oh, I hated it so much.
Yeah, I hated it, but like JD said, it looked great and it was a great scene. It was one of the reasons why episode 3 was one of my favorites. Again, it made my skin crawl, but it was done well. like, so by the way, that's one of the Easter eggs I was gonna throw out there that we've gotten in this 3-episode premiere. So I believe that big spider was Shelob. We see Shelob in Lord of the Rings: The Return of the King. She attacks Frodo and Sam. She paralyzes Frodo. And they're in the area where that would have been in Mordor, like where that whole, I forgot the name of the fortress they were at where Shelob is, Carath Ungol or something like that. But that's where they are. They're in that location. So I think that's Shelob and her children. And Shelob has a whole deep lineage. She's the last child of this spider-like being Ungoliant, who is just horrifying. But basically, like, almost on the level of the eagles, but spiders.
And
so
lives for a while.
Yes, lives for a long, long, like, thousands of years. So I think that was young Shelob, which was a cool little nod. And then, dude, right when they pour out, Isildur comes across these marshes with these dead people underwater.
Yeah.
And to me, I don't know if you guys thought, but it reminded me
Frodo.
of the Two Towers. Yeah, when they're crossing with Smeagol and they're the dead people underwater and they start kind of getting hypnotized by it. And again, it's in the area of Mordor, so I'm not positive it was it, but it seemed like a nod.
Yeah, that's what I thought too.
Yeah, he's kind of going in Sam and Frodo's journey in reverse. He's leaving Mordor, going out of there, so now he's hitting all these spots that look familiar. All right, and then I don't know why I'm saying that. What do we think, Lub? What do you think about Arondir's entrance and coming back?
I mean, I knew it was him the second I saw the arrows flying through the air. I was like, there's my
Right.
boy. And he does like a double front flip twist to land in this side and then starts.
A little CGI flip, but
Yeah.
it looked sick.
It was savage. Like, he just
Yeah.
killed everyone, no questions asked. Like, not even going to ask what's going on here. Like, you guys are all dying. It's pretty
Yeah.
crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, sick action from Arondir. He's definitely, one of he's like our new age Legolas, obviously, but he's carrying a lot of good action stuff there. I'm not like absolutely loving the rest of the scenes when he's not killing people, but it's cool.
Yeah, we're getting this emotional plot point. So Bronwyn's dead. She succumbed to her wounds from season 1, and
the
the
hell?
reason for that is the actress didn't return because she's a very big social activist from Iran. And I guess she's been like making waves, like she's been doing a ton of stuff. I think she won a Nobel Peace Prize, or she won some humanitarian award last year too. So she's doing a bunch of stuff outside of acting. So that she wasn't going to return because she has more important stuff going on. So yeah, she was killed off. She didn't survive. And I'm just telling you right now, the last thing I want is a Theo storyline about him dealing with the loss of his mother. Don't you dare.
It's
Don't
coming.
you dare.
It's
Don't
coming.
Don't you dare. Stop
I mean,
it.
It's too late now. I'm sorry.
Stop it, bro. I really hope the last scene so all right, we'll get into that. So Theo and Arondir and Isildur are attacking these Southland men, and something happens. Some big thing breaks into the chaos, creates more chaos, and we see Theo get picked up from a very high location, high camera point. And I know what it is, but I'm hoping I'm wrong, and I'm hoping it's the troll, and I'm hoping next episode the troll walks into a scene and we see a little Theo head hanging from the belt. And we go, okay, good, that's over with, and we don't have to worry about him anymore.
That's what I was
But
doing.
unfortunately, I don't think it is. Did you guys got any theories on what the tall being picking him up was?
I was hoping Isildur wouldn't turn back when Theo yelled out his name. Just go. Just go. Let him. You got your horse.
Just go, man. He's fine.
He's a lost cause already. I thought it was an orc too, but isn't there what we talked about with the barrow whites or whatever it was, the really tall things? Was
The
that
barrow
them?
whites, that won't be them, but they will be popping up soon here. But no, I don't believe it was that. JD, you got any guesses?
No, I'm not invested into that story either, and I didn't really pick up that he was picked up. I don't even.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, there was a camera angle where he's looking straight up and he gets all scared, and then I think he gets grabbed or something, but he's looking at something very tall at the end. So I don't know for sure, but I'm pretty positive. I think it's the Ents. So I think we're getting Ents, who they're in this forest, and all these people were wielding axes. Like they made a point of showing people holding these axes. So I think these are Ents. Ents, obviously, we get in the trilogy. They're near extinct because, as Treebeard says, they lost the Entwives. I don't know where they went, so they can't recreate anymore. The Entwives are gone, so they're almost extinct by the time we see them. But I think we're gonna get Entwives in this series, and I'd bet money that that was an Ent that picked Theo up, and he'll be fine, unfortunately.
Okay.
But yeah, I sure hope it's the troll. But I'm pretty positive it's Ents. So that would be cool though. I like the Ents, so get some cool Ent
Ents are
scenes.
sick.
As long as we don't get super slow dialogue for a ton of the episodes, like I'm here for it.
Theo literally told Arendir, "You're not my dad. I don't have to listen to you."
Kid
Like,
sucks.
that's what he said.
Kid just
Like,
sucks, bro.
so
Like nobody wants you here, kid.
just go over to Sauron.
Your
already.
mom didn't even want you here. Get out of here. That was a little harsh. You probably liked him, but I hate him. All right, so before we wrap it up, I was going to go over Easter eggs that we got in these episodes, but I already listed them all off while we were going through. The only other thing I didn't mention is in episode 1, when Elrond goes to find that old wise dude, Círdan, to seek counsel, we get the little tagline below as the Grey Havens in Lindon. And it looked very similar. It almost looked like the same dock, but the Grey Havens is where Frodo and Gandalf depart with the elves at the end of the trilogy, and they say goodbye to Sam and the hobbits, and they dip off to the Undying Lands. So there's a little nod. That's the same place they were at. Where
One of
Elrond
the
went to.
endings.
Yes, one of the 17 endings. But so yeah, that's it. Sorry, long episode, but they did drop 3-hour-long episodes, so there was a lot to cover. We just got back into the area, so our future Rings of Power episodes will not be this long. Don't you worry. But real quick, before we wrap it out of here, let's get an overall premiere. So all 3 episodes combined, 1 to 10 rating. JD, what do you got?
Before I do a rating, I thought
Oh, yeah.
I saw an Easter egg-ish kind of thing, and that was when Celebrimbor created that invisible writing, and he said he used something called Ithilden, and it was
You're right.
made from like the last sliver of Mithril. So that obviously made me think of the writing on the ring that shows when it's thrown into fire or whatever, and I thought that was kind of maybe a nod to
Totally
that.
right. No, you're
Right.
totally right. Great point. Yeah, and I didn't even write that down or anything. But that when I watched the scene, my first thought was, yeah, the scene with Gandalf, Melon, where they're trying to get into the door there, and they got the invisible writing. So yeah, good call.
Yeah,
Good call.
that was sick. And I also had a question, like, who's killing the messengers on their way to Lindon? If Sauron's already in there, like, who's he got working for him that's killing the messengers?
That
He
was
was kinda
weird
by
the way
himself.
they shot that, because it almost looked like it was him thinking of a memory of him killing them and dragging them off with the chains that they were being dragged off in. Because right after we flip back, we see the bodies being dragged off, and then it flips right back to Halbrand, like kind of smiling or smirking. And so I don't know. I didn't know if either A, that was just a random flashback of it was him who did that, or if there is somebody else out there. So yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
it was odd the way
Because he
they
doesn't
shot
have
it.
like he doesn't have a following of orcs at this point or anything.
Nothing.
So
Yeah.
that's weird. I wonder.
I think it had to have been him, and they just
He
really
used the
shot
Force.
it weird.
Yeah.
He used the Force. Sauron's powerful.
And I guess for rating, I'm thinking like a solid low 8. You know, I'm in the 8
Okay.
category, probably 7.9 because episode 3 was pretty slow for me. So solid. Really excited where it's going. I really love that there is a direct story plot going on here. You know, everything's building up to the important stuff. They're not tiptoeing around everything and going all sorts of different directions outside of like Numenor. That can get out of here. The Theon stuff just put a damper on the whole Isildur Arendir storyline. I think that's why I don't think I'm invested in that storyline. Is probably
That's fair.
because of Theon.
That is fair.
So,
Yeah, Greyjoy?
or sorry, what's his name? Theo. Yeah.
They both suck.
Yeah. So with the slow stuff, it's at I'm gonna go high 7, so I'll go 7.9.
Okay. I like it. Caleb, where are you at on this?
I got it around like an 8.3. And
Oh,
I'll say
okay.
Galadriel's still my favorite character. I think she's the most like in-depth, most intriguing. Like whenever she's on screen is probably my favorite moment of the episode. And I just can't wait to see what happens with the rings and Anatar. Like I'm surprised we got the dwarf rings being forged this early in the season. Like, so they're moving quickly. So I do like that, and I'm very excited for the rest.
They are. That's a good point. They really, and I think they. So I think the way they rolled out these 3 episodes was smart. I think it really set the full stage for the season. I'm really glad they gave us all 3 at once. I think if they just would have dropped one, it would have been okay for me. But I love the fact that they gave us basically what felt like just part 1 of this season in one weekend. So that was cool. And yeah, it seems like they're cooking through. The last report I saw was the showrunners have a 5-season plan. So they're cooking through, but that's a lot of seasons. So they must be leading right up to the prologue of the Fellowship, the final battle at Mordor. Which, God, let a $1 billion budget show do that. I'm here for it.
Fuck yeah.
But that's interesting. So I actually have the lowest 1 to 10 rating. I had a 7.7 out of 10. I liked it. I'm very excited for the rest of the season. I think it's going to be a really good season. I think it's going to top season 1, and I think I'm with you, Lub. I think it's going to top House of the Dragon season 2, actually. But yeah, overall, the premiere itself, I saw a lot of people griping, a lot of people complaining, saying it was garbage. And I will say some of their complaints, I was like, yeah, I get it. I get that. And I had issues, but it's not garbage. Again, I'm not on that end of it. I think it was a pretty promising start to the season, you know.
Shit, I wonder if the Middle Earth crowd is going to become the Star Wars crowd, just polarized. You love, hate. I don't know.
Well, I did. So I mentioned in our Rings of Power Ultimate episode, you weren't able to join us on that one. But so when Lord of the Rings first dropped, when the trilogy dropped, there was no social media, but there were a ton of forums of people complaining, like, Aragorn's a terrible casting. They skipped this and this. Where's Tom Bombadil? Yada, yada, yada. And so there was a lot of complaints from the deep nerd crew of Lord of the Rings from those movies. So
I listened to that episode. I remember you saying that.
So yeah, I think. Thank you. You hear that, guys?
Y'all should watch it or listen to it.
Episode 141. I don't know if that's the episode. It's 142. So yeah, I just, my brain just hit a wall and I forgot what I was saying. So, we roll with the punches, and when we look back at things, we think, that's right. I think I was saying something along the lines of, didn't work.
Polarizing stuff, Lord of the Rings.
Yes, there you go. The crowd, people being pissed. It's out there, but I will say, I'm pretty deaf to it at this point. I've seen so many people call stuff the worst thing they've ever seen this year about stuff that was not that bad, and it's just like, all right, people just post stuff to get clicks and whatever. Not gonna let it influence our thoughts, obviously, but not gonna let it bother me either. We just push on, and we like this show so far. So shut up. Yeah, I'm stoked for the rest of the season. Nervous about Tom Bombadil. I don't know how they're gonna do that one, but I think it's gonna be a solid season. So. Any last thoughts before we head out of here, boys? Never. All right. Well, thank you out there for joining us here tonight. Look for this full episode to be posted on Spotify. If you're watching on YouTube right now, it'll come out shortly-ish. And we'll be here covering episode 4. Drop in... Are they Thursday nights? What are they dropping now? Thursday?
Shit, I thought it was today. But yeah, it's Thursday.
Oh, God. Yeah, tomorrow. It's going to be tough to watch. Anyways, thank you for joining us. As always, follow us on social medias. Get that TikTok up to 20K. We are cruising. Help us cruise a little more. And we will see you next time on another episode of Why So Sidious, a nerd podcast.